Hello and welcome to When We Grow Up, the podcast where we ask where we've been to know where we're going. We are your hosts. I'm Marlee Silva. You're Nicho Hynes.
I am.
And today we are so excited to be joined by the founder of Mindful League and our dear friend, Jarreds Brown. It is so lovely to be here on the couch with you. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm very excited to be here with you guys. Knowing you both personally, it's always a privilege to be in the space with you guys. I'm excited.
This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Gadigal people, one of the 29 clan groups that make up the Eora Nation. We acknowledge the traditional owners who are connected to this land and acknowledge their unbroken connection and sovereignty to all the lands that now make up Australia. We extend that acknowledgement to all of the traditional owners connected to the country you may be listening to this podcast from. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Before we get into today's episode, we do want to warn listeners there is some content that could be triggering for some people. If there's anything that's brought up today that affects you, know there is someone out there to listen. Make sure you call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Yeah, so Nicho, why don't you give a bit more of an explanation as to how you're connected to Jarreds, because that's how I met him and that's a good way to start.
Thank you, Marlee Silva. I was waiting for you to throw to me so I can talk in my own podcast. But anyway, Jarreds Brown, it's good to have you here. Jarreds is my mindset coach. We've been working together for about 2 years now. It's been well documented over the last probably 6 to 8 months that we've done some really good work together. But before that, we grew up on the Central Coast. I'm in Minor, he was Terrigal. We didn't get to know each other until about 14 years old. We had a game of footy together and we started playing that year for the Terrigal Sharks, and there might be a little photo later that will pop up on the screen. But then we played a couple of years together, then sort of went our own way. I chased my career, he chased his, and then we rekindled. And then he got into the work he's getting into, which he'll touch on a bit later. But yeah, so now we're colleagues and now he's on a podcast with me, which is exciting.
Very exciting.
So yeah, that's how we got to know each other, and I'm really excited for everyone listening to hear Jarreds' story. He's got a really cool story, and he's a really powerful message behind the work he does.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Jarreds, why don't you start with letting us know what a mindset coach actually is? Because I think that, that might not be something that people are super familiar with.
It's interesting. I guess I use the word mindset coach as a really nice way to try and simplify the work that goes on with athletes or humans, because it is so broad. And so I think when we think mindset, we just think, growing up, like it's motivation, inspiration, goal setting, like all these sorts of different things. So I feel like the word mindset just simplifies or labels the work in a nice way for someone to associate with. But I guess mindset work is exactly that. It's like understanding what are the key mindset blockages that are holding us as humans back, where did they stem from, and then ultimately how do we move through them. And yeah, that's what we do in its essence. And then the process to that is obviously so super unique to each and every individual.
So I've had the privilege now of sitting in on a couple of sessions with you and Nicho, and one we did not that long ago. I remember you started by getting us to reflect on a win and a challenge through the week. So maybe we can get a bit of a taster of what it looks like.
Before we start that, sitting in or interrupting, I don't know what you call it, Marlee, but
invited.
It was a very sacred space, our one-on-one sessions, and you decided to jump in, which was...
Well, she was invited.
It's not usually allowed, but
I was invited. I think I invited Marlee to, but I feel like it's really cool because when we did that session, you got to observe it. So it was like, it's interesting when you're on the observing perspective.
I'm doing my side here, like saying this was not okay that she joined in. But anyway, you can go run with that.
I'm on Marlee's lounge. 2v1.
All right, Brownie, go. We start these with our sessions.
Yeah, so wins and challenges are super important because obviously life is challenging and good, and it's duality, male, female, and everything in between. So wins and challenges. So often we'll start with a session, just understand where Nicho's at or where the athlete's at. So we know what's a win from the last 7 days, so I can get up to speed of where they're at, and what's a challenge. So Do you want to start? We'll go wins and challenge. We had a session this morning, so it's like pretty.
A win for me would be I'm back playing footy
Yep.
after 3 rounds off. I don't know when this is going to drop, this podcast, but for those of you who watch Rugby League and a fan of Rugby League, I got to play my first game of the year against the Dragons on the weekend. Had a good win in the local derby, so it felt really good to be back around the boys. Good win. Enjoyed a nice beer after the game, and happy to do that. And a challenge, this is a bit of a funny challenge. I have a bit of anxiety about dentists, and I had to get a root canal. And this morning I had to go, and I'm really, really scared of needles. And it's weird because I got a tattoo, and I get 1,000 needles in when you're getting a tattoo. But so I had to go face my fear of getting a root canal, which actually wasn't too painful. And I can say, if you're going to ever get a root canal, don't be scared like me, and you can get it done because it's not too bad. And a little funny story while I was there, I don't know if this has happened to anyone before, but I was busting to go to the toilet. And I needed to do a wee, not number 2, that's just a wee. And then like a chick walked out in like work clothes that looked like she worked there, and I was like, "Oh, hey, how are you? Like, you got a toilet here?" And she goes, "I don't work here." She was in like New South Wales health thing. She must be a nurse or something, and I thought that was the gear.
That's fair.
And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And then the chick come out like straight away. I goes, "Oh, you got a toilet here?" She goes, "Yeah, just around here." So if anything like that's happened to you before, I'd love to hear some stories. Send us through some of your embarrassing sort of stories. But have you guys ever done it before?
Yeah, I've had that a few times. Do you work here?
Yeah.
I feel like you happen to be wearing the same colour shirt as like the workers or something.
If it has health on the shirt, I think I would have done that as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't notice the health until after, but I just looked up so confidently, went, "Hey, how are you?" And she, then she goes, "I'm good," and sort of looked at me weird. And then I was like, "Oh, do you have a toilet here?" Anyway, Marlee, Silva, what's your wins and challenges?
Can I say that my win and challenge is kind of combined here, because and this is like going to make me sound like I have some sort of problem. I don't, but I have not.
Sure?
I have, after a very large summer, not been drinking for the last almost a month now, and I'm finding that on Sunday, actually at your game, I was very tempted to just pop down to the bar and grab a beverage, and or 10, and so the challenge there was like feeling like, I wanted to kind of party a bit and I don't know, go out or whatever, even though there's nowhere to go out on
Club
Sunday.
Pash.
Club Pash always. But the win then being that like I decided against it, and I feel so fresh, so much clarity in my mind. I feel like over the last month I've been super productive, and a couple of times I've gotten to Monday and did heaps of work prep on a Sunday where I'm twiddling my thumbs a little bit because I've got to, I'm way ahead of the game. So I'm feeling really good about that.
That's good.
So you're telling me
and that was a
fresh
challenging time.
Challenging was,
Gotcha,
yes.
gotcha.
Are you saying that's today what you're wearing and you're feeling is fresh look?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fight me on it. Can I also just
Brother and sister podcast.
It's really good that Jarred is here, because I think that you can keep us in line a bit while we're while he's going at me.
Another guest might get a little bit concerned.
Yes.
You guys are arguing.
Oh, they might be on my side.
Win for me is moved out over the weekend, so looking over the beach in Terrigal, which is nice.
Ooh,
my
that means you're on
fiancé.
the big bucks.
Yeah, something like that. Taking
I think I'm paying
one,
too much.
1% of Nicho's wage. So you do the math. And then a challenge would be, it's probably not so much of a challenge. It's an exciting challenge. It's just like readapting and just getting back into routine after moving. I feel like your life sort of goes on hold for those 3 or 4 days. So just adapting to that. So
Did you do all the heavy lifting, or did your better half do all the heavy lifting?
well, the better half is needs to be careful of doing some heavy lifting right now.
Yes.
So no, we all played a massive role, and I did the heavy stuff with my old man. So shout out to Gavin for helping me with that.
There's a time in that day, Marlee, Jarrod called me. He FaceTimed me to show me the house. And I was having a look, and he tried to put it on Tay, and she was like, "Get away from me, I'm fucking tired," or whatever. And she was so tired and cranky.
She's tired.
I loved it. And I
Nito
wanted to
doesn't
keep going
know.
at her. I wanted to keep going at her, but Jarrod was like, "No, she's tired, leave her alone." But that's when my time was to strike, but he didn't let me do it. So
Well, Nito will never, us men will never experience what Tay is currently feeling. So yes, I don't know if we'll get to it, but we've got a little bubble. We've got a little bubble on the way. So
Which is so exciting.
a little brown bus running around, eh?
yeah, very exciting.
Well, that's a perfect segue, I think, because, we're talking about new life, but we're going to take you back now in time to you thinking about your younger self when you were just a little baby yourself. Maybe not that fresh baby as what Tay's experiencing right now, but our show is all about looking back to go forward, understanding where you've been, to know where you're going. And I wonder, is thinking about your younger self something that ever comes up in the work you do with the athletes that you connect with, or is it something that you do in your own life when you are kind of pursuing new goals?
I actually think what's great around my younger self from the sporting perspective is that somewhat relatability with the athlete. So I think that helps out massively. Maybe 2 years ago, I would have thought about it much. A story is a weird thing, right? We all have a story. And so I don't really, when you're trying to work through something that, say, was challenging in your past, I've sort of reframed my thinking where I don't think about it as much anymore because I'm worried that it still might haunt me a little bit. So I haven't been sort of worried about my past or thinking about my past a whole lot. But I think that's because I've sort of maybe moved through those challenges in the challenging times of the past. So yeah, I'm an open book with the past, but I think come back to your question around how's it helped today. I think growing up in sport, I feel like it just makes the transition with the athlete so much easier to relate to them. So if they were having a conversation with someone in a suit and tie that doesn't know sport, like I would imagine it would be a little bit harder for them to sort of lower that resistance and feel like they can really be themselves around. So yeah, I think it helps in that sense.
Well, the first thing you should have done with me is what you like to do with the people you work with is find the trauma in them when you're younger, and you've probably done work on all your trauma.
Yeah.
But so you liked to in the athletes you work with for them to look back to move forward, sort of thing, don't you? Like that's what you done with me. Like the first thing you ever done was put up on a whiteboard saying, "Who is Nicho Hynes?" And I've never had that before, and then we sort of went deeper and deeper into my trauma for me to deal with those things and those traumas to move forward to be the better person I am now. Like so,
for sure. And I think the word trauma can feel quite heavy. But it is the reality of the situation, and we all have it. I sort of like to reframe it as like we all have a story, and it's just learning what parts of our story has created sort of different behavioral patterns based on that event. So, as a child or not even just as a child, but when an event happens, when a traumatic event happens, like a car accident, or for Nicho's instant, seeing what he went through, you've obviously been very public around your story and whatnot and the things that you've gone through or whatever it may be. There's little T trauma and there's big T trauma, right? So we've all experienced little T trauma to a degree, and some of us experienced big T trauma, massive car accidents. I won't go too deep into it, just, because it can be quite confronting. But I think once we all accept that there's a challenge there, then we can look at, okay, cool, what are the behaviors that are linked with these challenges, and what did we do as a child to protect ourselves in that moment? Because more often than not, we're going to be going into some sort of fight, flight, freeze response in those moments. So for example, looking at Nicho's story, it's like, what are the belief structures that he created in his past around the event that happened, and then how can we understand that so it's no longer holding him back? That's what we do. And that's why when you asked about the mindset question before, it's like there's such a depth to it.
Yeah.
I guess what the good thing is just meeting the individual of where they're at. And so I'm not going to go walk into a conversation and say, hey, Tommy, your trauma, for someone that isn't necessarily on that path. I think what made it easier for me, Nicho, was we had that, he had that trust in me because we were mates early on. So I felt like I could go there a lot earlier.
Well, we're going to show you this first picture that we've got up that Nicho actually got from your mum. So it is quite a cute one, actually. Can you tell us, so there's a black and white photo here of you, in a pretty cool looking Hawaiian shirt. How old were you and who else is in the photo with you?
Yeah, I actually got some fucking goosebumps when that photo came up. And I guess not a tear in my eye, but like I don't see and look back on photos much like this, and obviously it means a lot to me. So I'm with my sister Kaylee and my little cousin Damon, and just seeing his like hands over his face there, it sort of just reminds me of, you know, that image just sums up who he was as a kid. So he was my cousin, my first cousin, but our relationship was like big brother, little brother. And when I was when I was 10, my grandma, I found out later on, committed suicide because she had a broken back for many years and was in a lot of pain. And I found out that basically the last thing that she looked at was, I don't know if it was that image, but it was an image of us three grandchildren. That was the last thing she was looking at. Then the exact day, 1 year later, my auntie murdered my little cousin Damon. And it was I got a text message to say that my nan and pop were picking me and my sister up from swimming, and it's just really strange. And then like just a bit of a blur, like seeing your mum and dad come in trying to tell you the story. It's a moment I'll never forget. I'm thankful for it because it's created a lot for me. But yeah, it was definitely a tough time, and I often forget that our family went through that. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it was definitely a tough experience. And unfortunately, we have somewhat of a broken family for it, or there's a person within the family that we don't associate with. And you know what? Like, one of the things of my own healing was to actually confront her and have a conversation with her. But I think as well, just to preface that we all have choice in our life and we all get to choose who we associate with. And I think just because they're family, that doesn't come with some sort of unwritten contract that you have to have a relationship with them.
How did little Jarrod Brown there deal with what happened when Damon unfortunately got murdered?
I probably didn't know the extent. Like, I knew it.
And how old were you at the time when it happened?
11.
Mm.
I probably didn't know the extent, and I had so much support. Like the first day I went to school the day it happened, and I don't know if that was me just avoiding it, but as an 11-year-old, you're not really conscious of what you're thinking or feeling. And I remember having a chat with the principal, and I had a lot of support, and so did Kaylee. And mum and dad took us to see a psychologist, and I probably wasn't aware of the magnitude of the situation at the time, to be honest with you. It sort of hit me a little bit later on, where I understood like the magnitude of it. But I've done so much work on myself to unlock and understand what it was about that. And so it was probably about 18, 19 where I really, really started to understand the behaviors that I adopted. Like, I behaved with this sort of guilt and shame. I got it even tattooed on my wrist, but I adopted this like guilt and shame that it's like, well, he didn't have an opportunity, so like you should have to do more. And I was putting him on my wrist every time I played, and it was my phone background. But when I started to really look at intrinsic and external motivators, I was like, are you actually doing this for him, or are you doing it for yourself? Like, we shouldn't be doing anything, but I ideally want to be doing everything for me first, and then someone else is then an extension of that. And I found myself getting into this not this dark place, but this place where I just felt a lot of shame if I wasn't going for that extra run, or wasn't doing this, or wasn't doing that. And because I felt like he didn't have that opportunity. So when I flipped that and remove that guilt and shame, I started to have a really nice relationship with his passing, because, you know, whether you believe in psychic or not, like I felt his presence around it. Anytime I saw a psychic or Taylor saw a psychic, his energy was always in the room. We've had 6 different psychics over the years, just in different things, and he's always been there. And so now I feel it's more of an energy of he's just with me. Like, he just travels with me around. Like, I sort of use it as fuel. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys bringing this up, because it sort of brought back.
Do you think he'd be very proud of the man you are today?
Yeah, well, having, you know, the gym, which I'm sure we'll get into, named after him, and transitioning where we are today, like, it'd be pretty crazy to think he'd be 19 or 20 now, which is pretty cool. But I wouldn't change anything for the world, as crazy as that may seem, because his passing has given me a lot of strength in a lot of ways too. So I'm sure he'd be really proud.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that, Jarrod.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's such an interesting perspective for you to let go of that. I'm doing everything for him. I think that that's something a lot of us, anyone who's been through grief, can probably relate to in some way, shape, or form. Feeling that, feeling indebted to that memory in a lot of ways. So yeah, there's a lot of bravery in that, and I think in so much of the stuff that you speak about so openly, as you've said. We might go to the next photo now, which is going to shift into something you've also already touched on, is this passion for sport that you've had. I think all three of us have a photo with JT at a young age. So he's what you can't see, but we'll describe to you as how old are you in this photo, Jarrod?
I reckon I'm probably around that age, to be honest with you, like about 11, 12.
That would have been when Queensland were visiting Central Coast, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was at the start of the sea at Terrigal, yeah.
And Jonathan Thurston is signing you've got a Queensland jersey on.
Queensland jersey. I would have got the same. Actually got JT's actual headgear signed.
No way.
Yeah, so Charlie Lambert, shout out to Charlie, worked for Channel 9, who's now at Fox, and he obviously, so he was dating a girl that I was dating. He was dating the sister. And,
I thought you were going to say you were both dating the same woman then.
No. So he was dating the older sister, I was dating the younger sister, and we obviously had a relationship, and he knew I loved JT, so he hooked it up.
Sick.
So I've got it at home, which is cool.
That would have been around the exact same time, because I think they were staying there, and then they trained at Were We Over once, and that's when I got a photo of JT.
Probably is.
And then you would have been there getting a photo of him like a day or two before
and we
or
both
after me.
loved the Cowboys and we didn't even know.
Yeah. And just for a bit more context, the next photo I think is you playing footy. So yeah, this is you playing for the Terrigal Sharks, I believe.
I sent this to Marlee last night. Did I send this to you? Or this morning, whenever it was?
Yeah, last night.
And she doesn't even notice me in that photo, Jarrod.
Oh, wow.
So this is our grand final in 2010, I'm pretty sure it was.
What are the two boppers at the back?
We got, Jacob and Daniel Safidi were our front rowers. I was the halfback and Jarrod was a centre. So this is at Central Coast Stadium, and we won that grand final. And
Olympian in that team too.
Riley Fitzsimmons. He's a kayaker.
Yeah.
So he's an Olympian. So we had a pretty handy team. And in saying that, Jarrod, like, did you have a dream to play in the NRL one day? When did your love for rugby league begin, and how did you find that year with us playing together and all the boys?
Yeah, that year probably, like, thinking back now, I haven't even thought it was probably like the catalyst of me wanting to explore more. I think Chris did a phenomenal job. Chris Newman did a great job that year to bring us together, and I felt like I haven't felt like teamwork like that. I hadn't experienced teamwork like that before, and I felt like that sort of set a standard of what I was looking for within a team. And that was just such a fun year, like, to beat a lot of teams that have been undefeated and to do it with that group of boys that felt connected with was a lot of fun. But I always had dreams of playing NRL and rugby league growing up, and I had dreams of playing rugby league growing up. But I played against Nicho. We did verse each other up in Darwin for schoolboys, and I felt like I got close, but the universe obviously had different plans for me and followed different avenues, and I'm thankful I did it. Like, there is a part of me that misses it a lot. Like, I would love to throw on a jersey, and sometimes I find myself, oh no, like, I'd love to run out in those sheds, but at the same time, I'm having the best impact I can possibly have without actually getting sore the next day.
Yeah. You get the best seat in the house. Yeah. Sit there, watch your athletes go to war, and you get to talk to them about how they're feeling, and you don't get to feel the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
So with all of that mind of, this is the stuff that you went through in your childhood, some of that trauma that you spoke about, but also these fun moments. At what point or at what age did you become conscious of sort of mindfulness and start doing clearly a lot of research and investigation to work on your own trauma as you've described, but then see it as potentially being a career?
So I was pursuing football hard, and then I did my knee and I put on a bit of weight, and I found love for fitness. I came across a mentor, Andrew Papp, who was on the coast, joined his boot camp, and then sort of loved it, realized I could have a career in something that I still love. So I got in health and fitness. And then I started my own gym and grew it from the age of 19. And when it went really, really well, and it was about probably 3 to 4 years in, I connected with some mates and we started a podcast and a program called Bridge the Gap, which was bringing men together. And sort of started out as that mental health conversation. And I really, really loved that. I had some great interviews. Interviewed Nicho, actually. It was like one of his first podcasts out in Melbourne. It'd be pretty cool to listen back on that.
That would be pretty fun.
Actually, I don't think we released it.
No, we never did.
It'd be cool to listen back on that just to see how far you've come in your voice. So that was like a catalyst to really like finding that deeper connection below the surface. And then as I wanted to add more meaning to the gym. My experience with health and fitness is a funny one, right? You go through those 10-week challenges and this and that, and you know, it's a crazy one. But when we look at it and when we go under the surface a little bit more, we go, what is the thing driving all of these actions and these decisions? And it all came back to the mind. And so I did my best to navigate COVID while bringing mindset and the market on the Central Coast. It probably is big enough, but I just sort of fell out of love with the gym aspect itself, and financially it was very tough coming through COVID, and I decided to pursue more of this mindfulness stuff. But I guess from the education perspective, you were saying school was a really challenging time for me, being labelled, which I don't associate with now, but labelled on the spectrum, ADHD, Asperger's. School was really hard to like absorb the information in the way it was being taught to make sense, and then try and put that into paper or a mathematical equation. So university was never an option for me because it just wouldn't get the best out of the way, I think. So I am very much self-based taught. So like what I've loved is I've worked through my own shit essentially. And then through that embodiment, I've understood the principles, the mechanics of the mind, understood it all. And then I go, cool, I've learnt that now, so I can deliver that because I felt like I've mastered it to some degree within myself. I can then bottle it up and be able to support someone with that. So then that's cool. And then I was interested in breath work. So I went and did my breath work course. And then I was interested in like child, like trauma. And so I worked with a psychoanalysis, and then I'm working with a healer and therapist now. And so what drew me in, like I did my yoga teacher training. It was more, what was the curiosity within myself, and then just explore that curiosity rather than going to uni and having some set curriculum or anything. And I'm not saying uni's not the way to go. If it's the way to go for you, you do that. Yeah. Just that set curriculum didn't allow me with the flexibility and creativity that I wanted to experience within my own mindset discoveries, I guess.
And now you've grown to a point where you can work on this full time with Mindful League. So yeah, tell us about the business aspect and how many athletes are you working with now?
So yeah, we're super vulnerable with each other. So I always like to tell Nicho that I'm super appreciative of him giving me a shot to try all this work. And I guess Nicho showed me last year what I felt like I was capable of. And there were so many times in our conversations last year where I said to him, like, I'm doubting myself or whether I'm good enough to work in this space, to work with someone that went from where he was to where he is now, which the great thing is it's still the same human being. But from a media perspective, I felt like I was a sort of a part of that journey a little bit. And with that, just naturally got exposure. And so last year working with Nicho, I started to notice the work was working. And I was like, you know what, I could like really go down this and make it a full-time career. And so I closed the gym and decided to go all in this year, moving forward in Mindful League. And
you closed the gym or you sold it?
I sold the space. I just paid off the debts that I owed from COVID and just sold the space and happy days, no debts to pay off, which was probably not a bad result considering some of the poor businesses at the moment. So yeah, decided to go all in on Mindful League, and we went on a retreat in the off season, and probably the best marketing campaign I've ever done. I said to Boothie and Nicho, I was like, hey boys, like you guys come on this retreat. It's all covered by me. We don't have to pay for anything. Like, it's all sorted. We'll go away for 2 nights. And obviously with the intent, that wasn't the intent. The intent was obviously to create an experience. And we had a really great experience and a memorable time. I'm sure Boothie's still in the vortex of wherever you went to during that breath work. So we had a great time, and then we launched the official night of Mindful Lead with Nicho, which I'm blessed about. And from there, it just gained a lot of traction. And now,
Big thanks to the farm that let us.
Wellness Farm,
Thank you
for allowing that beautiful space. But
so we did promote the farm as well while we were there, so it wasn't just promoting his business.
Yeah. No, we did. We promoted them. But so 13 athletes, I think, now one-on-one. And then I'm starting to build out a membership. So that membership is a little bit more reasonably priced for someone that isn't on those pro contracts per se, that is still wanting to get the tools in a group coaching setting. So that membership, hopefully we can spread the message a little bit deeper and bigger rather than just trading one-on-one time. So we just had one of our athletes get gold in the world champs at boxing, which was really cool over in India. So awesome. It's super exciting just to work with different athletes from different sports. So yeah.
Amazing. Nicho, I actually want to ask you, through this journey with Jarred, where has your what's your mindset around this mindset coaching stuff? Like, I just think that like you're obviously influencing other people in your sport as well to think about this sort of stuff with the success that you've had. But was there anything that you felt, I don't know, a bit hesitant towards when you first started working with Jarred?
No, there wasn't anything I was hesitant about, like, because I was a big overthinker and a stress head, and I would very, very often go to sleep at night thinking about, this or that. And sometimes I'd even like ask myself before I go to sleep, all right, what do I have to stress about right now? Because I was just so used to stressing and I just did not sleep. And yeah, so I never hesitated. And I knew that when I was leaving the Melbourne Storm that I was the man for the Cronulla Sharks, and they've brought me to be the man. And I need to fix my mindset and my mental state to be what the Cronulla need, and for the fans, and to show them how much I want this position. And yeah, so I had no hesitation in talking to Jarrod about it and working and paying him to do it and be fully committed, because I listened to a podcast on Dan Carter, the High Performance podcast it was, and I watched his doco on Stan. I just fell in love with Dan Carter and his story, and he quoted in it saying, like, there's only so many hours you can put in the gym, there's only so many hours you can put on the field, but why do we never put any hours into our mind? And because that's the first thing that gives way, your mindset, and that's what gives in first. And my mind probably gave in a fair bit, not really on the field, it never would. Like, I'm a really hard trainer and I'd put all the work in, but off field, like, with certain areas of my life, I reckon that was always would give in first. So I just wanted to put things in place to make sure that didn't happen, and so I could get the absolute best out of myself day to day, but also the best out of myself in my career. Because you're only in a career of rugby league for a small amount of time, so why not squeeze the life out of it? So yeah, I've done that, and I don't really like to force it on people and give them all this information to go, you need to sort your mind out, because it's each to their own. People are gonna, if they want to do it, they have to want to do it. You have to want to be able to put the hours in to do it as well. Like, you want to put hours in the gym, you want to put hours in the field. Like, it's not just something that happens overnight. Like, you can't have a session with Jarrod overnight and then be like, oh, my mindset's great, I'm going to go win a premiership now, sort of thing. So
it's also not like a commodity or a fantasy either. Like, it takes effort.
It does. It takes, like, it's sometimes.
And when you came out with it, I felt like potentially people it takes effort. Yeah. I don't think people appreciated the effort that Nicho actually probably put into it.
Yeah, it'd be like Sunday Arvo. I probably went out the night before, and all I want to do is have a nap, and I'm just like, I've got to do this session. But like, it does. It's like having an 8 o'clock stretch at night. Like, that's the things you don't see with athletes. That's the hardest stuff to get done, because you're at home and you want to do everything else, but you have to get these little areas to be your best. And yeah, so it does take a lot of effort. But yeah, like, I will, if people come up to me and ask me about it, I'll tell them about it and how it's worked for me and how good it is, and how I think a lot of people should. I reckon everyone should be doing this or seeing a psychologist or whatever, just so that they live their best life. But yeah, I won't throw it in their face, because each their own. Like, some people, like, say, for example, Toby Rudolph doesn't have a worry in the world. He's the most chilled out character ever. But even someone like him, I tell him he should be doing this shit. But so there's people in the world who just go through life as a breeze, and that's fine. It's perfectly fine. Everyone can live the life they want. So I will promote it, and I will tell people when they ask me that, like, you should give it a go. But in saying that, like, it's a competitive advantage as well.
I would say, Jarredd, because I have been an observer for a couple of sessions now, that the first time I met you, actually, when it was up at your mum and dad's place in your little office there and sat through that session, I found it really confronting, and confronting in the way that it does take a lot of work, and it's hard to be that self-reflective and go that deep. And the questions that you were asking, Nicho, I just was like, whoa, like to have, and I know that he has those at the forefront of, like, it's easy to sit here and any kind of person can kind of talk about their values or something, but the way that it gets into sort of like the fabric of your being, the work that you do is so hard. Like, I think that that's such a unique thing. I wonder, because obviously, most of the people listening to this are not, people who want to be professional athletes. I'm not that either, but I found a lot of value through the kinds of stuff that you've challenged me with. Is there any particular advice, and I think around the sort of like overcoming self-doubt sort of theme, I think is something all of us face regardless of what you do, that you would give to the average person? You do also share a lot of this on your Instagram, so everyone go and follow at Mindful League. But
I think what's great about the Mindful League message is it's relatable for anyone. It just tweets to the performer. Yeah. So it's a universal message. I think the biggest thing when you're talking about confronting, I think the hardest thing is if we allow ourselves to feel, we will heal. So if we don't allow ourselves to let our guard down and let our mask down, we've become professional masters, and it's just in the society we're living through, the developments of social media, through school, through, everything, to fast fashion, how we want to look. Everything's become this way of how we can please the avatar that we've created for ourselves. And I think if we connect more with the human and allow that human to be seen and heard more, it's like the monkey gets off the back, the stress is out of the shoulders, and we can just be like, oh, thanks God, someone can relate to me. So I think although it can be confronting, it's like the first and foremost is just making sure that safe space for Nicho to feel safe in is there. And once that's there, hopefully then that person can, let go a little bit and lower that resistance that we all hold up in our lives, which is a mechanism which we talked about through whatever's happened in their life. Then we can start to feel and heal, because we all have stuff. We've all been through stuff, but we've just become so good at suppressing that. And so through this suppression, it's not like, it's actually, my therapist said the other day, it takes more energy to suppress something than it is to actually talk about and let off your chest. So think from a biological perspective and how it's actually showing up in our day-to-day, like it actually takes more effort to keep it hidden, which is crazy to even think. But when we looked at self-doubt, working with my therapist at the moment, Pure Jaguar, on social media, that's his name, it's been interesting because he's been talking about like affirmations, right? And it's been super fascinating because he's like, affirmations are just reaffirming something that we already feel we're not. So when we actually say the affirmation, all we're doing is reaffirming the thing that we aren't. And so when we looked at self-doubt, if I just go, I feel like I don't feel like I have confidence. If we actually own and accept that rather than trying to be something that we're not feeling, it will be heaps better. Because if we just accept I lack confidence, then so cool, like let's do something about that. Let's support that. But if I go, or if I know I lack self-confidence, but I'm trying to portray to be something I'm not, it's just going to make that cycle a lot harder to actually move through the self-doubt in the first place. So as soon as we accept something, we own it. If we try and avoid it, it owns us. So if we allow ourselves to go, you know what, because we all have limiting beliefs, we all have certain things. The Dalian medalist has things that he struggles with. I have things that I struggle with. And so I go, yeah, cool, I'm not the way I want to look right now, but it's now my choice on how I choose to respond differently. Then I own it rather than it owning me.
Yeah, I just feel like every time you talk, there's so much stuff that I want to like write down and like reflect on and that sort of stuff.
Well, why don't you join the crew? Mindful League, mate. Jump on board.
I'm not an athlete.
She can be an advocate. You can be an ambassador.
Thanks. Okay.
No. She needs to get some work done first.
Tay.
Thinking more now about you reflect, like obviously, yeah, we're getting this like great little free taster of what it's like to work with you, which is awesome. And I think people will really appreciate hearing some of that stuff. But thinking about you and your personal journey, I think we'll go to the next photo now, which is you and your family. And obviously you pursuing this and being as successful as you are and where you're at, I imagine these are some of your massive part of your support network.
One in the red.
Nicho's talking about Jarred's sister here, I believe.
I thought he was talking about Kobe on the drown.
The dog. So, to describe the photo that we're seeing, it's you, your parents, and your sister.
Yep.
I imagine quite recently. Is it at your place?
Christmas at our uncle and auntie's new place in Sydney.
And a couple of dogs in the photo.
Yeah,
so
Kobe and Snoop.
What do you feel when you look at this photo and see where you guys are at, knowing what you've been through and where you are now? Interesting
now that we just moved out, because I felt heaps closer to, well, I am closer, obviously, mum and dad, but now moved out. But we looked at that photo, obviously mum's there, describing the photo, mum's got bald head. So mum's just been through a rough trot with cancer, but thankfully has come out the other side, been all cleared. She absolute weapon with the ice bars.
That's amazing.
But yeah, these guys have been really, really good. Like, I guess it was us that went through that pain that we spoke about before, and we've all carried that in certain ways into our lives. But you know, when I look at my dad in that photo, he's taught me so much about being a man, and I don't mean that in the unemotional type man, like just really nice values and providing and those sorts of things. Mum, I feel like I get a lot of my resilience from mum, and we've built a really nice connection over the last sort of 12 months, helping her to the best degree I can as a son and a mum, without it sort of, because, you know, mums and sons and mums, we have conflict with each other, right? So it's like trying to be mindful of my boundaries and her boundaries, but we've done a really good job to build a relationship where I can support her to the best of my ability. And then my sister is an interesting one. I would say, like, for a long time there, we didn't, like, not that we didn't see eye to eye, but we clashed a lot. But it's probably been in the last sort of year that we've got a lot closer. I think she maybe struggled to understand me a little bit. And I think now doing this work with the athletes, she can sort of see my perspective in the world. But you always run a butt head with your siblings, right? So, no, I'm very honoured to have the family that I do, and they've given me a lot and provided me a lot of opportunities. So
I must say, I've been a very close spectator on this whole situation. And man, like, your family's been so strong through it all, and you got to take my hat off to you, Jarred. Like, you've been your mum's rock, I reckon, and you know, you've made her do the ice bars, stick to the routine. You've put all things in place so she can get every way possible, everything out of it, so she can beat it. And I just think that, you know, it's pretty crazy. And like, yeah, I respect you so much for the way you dealt with it all, and you helped her through, and you know, and your old man and your sister and the extended family with your partner and Kaylee's partner too.
Yeah.
Like, they've obviously been a massive help, and you know, they would have been the ears for your guys to talk to, like, you know, that you would have unloaded a lot of energy and steam on them, and so everyone deserves a big congratulations on getting through it, and especially your mum too. She's been a soldier, and she's been messaging me all through it, and just talking about footy and life, and congratulations to you, Karina, for being a trooper to get through, and I'm really proud of the Brown family of the way they handled it. So well done.
Thanks, mate. I think she likes you more than me sometimes.
I'm the golden child.
And how proud are they of what you're doing in your work?
They're, really, really proud. Like, I think it's when you're not working with an athlete, like when you're working with athletes that are in front of the media, I feel like it becomes a little bit more obvious to people, or measurable, tangible. And so I think now that they've seen it play out with Nicho and the other athletes that I'm working with, they're like, maybe this is just me, but it's almost like they didn't know what I was doing. Right. And now that it's sort of seen being played out, I feel like I've sort of had this limiting belief where, like, the work that I've done with a PT or this sort of work isn't a job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a job. Like, when are you going to go get a real job mentality? But I don't think they've had that. But I think now that they've seen it play out with Nicho and other athletes, they're like, they can really see the value that's there.
Yeah, I can certainly relate because my family doesn't know what I do either. We'll go.
I think anyone knows what you do. You do.
Yeah, no, I'm just
everything.
an enigma. I'm just here. We'll go to the last photo here, and this is, of course, you and Taylor, your
Will be.
Fiance.
and the mother of your child.
Yes.
Soon to be, which is all very exciting. And I think that looking at this photo and thinking about what lies ahead of you in your own personal life, this is kind of thinking about the future. So we've reflected on where you've come from. We've looked at where you're at and what you're achieving at the moment, but this is your future. And obviously that's something that's so exciting.
You're
and
saying that with a big smile on your face, Marlee.
because
You seem
it's
very
beautiful. I am very excited. I love and I love what you guys are creating, and the two of you, how you work together. You really, I don't know, seem to lift each other up, and that's just such a great example of a good relationship there. So, I mean, first of all, how are you feeling about all of that?
I think like initially, like I just love being honest. Like accepting being a father was an interesting one. It's like, holy shit, like you need to develop a relationship with the word responsibility, like, and a better one with it.
Yeah.
I actually like honestly felt, and shout out to all the men out there that are finding out being fathers. Like, she's the one that's creating the child, and there was a part of me that felt like a little bit on the sidelines there for a little bit, which I am to a degree, and I'll cop that. But like, it was interesting the first couple of weeks because so much of the attention was surrounding Tay, which is value, like, of course, but there was a part of me like, oh, like I didn't have much to connect with, like, or two. But we haven't found out the gender. We're finding out in a couple of weeks. We got the results back from the Harmony test, so all like the basic stuff's all cleared, which is really nice. So it's a healthy baby, which is exciting. So yeah, I'm really excited. We moved out now. Obviously, that was a priority. So mum and dad don't have to cop the baby screaming, and just looking forward to building a strong family. And you know, hopefully over the next 6 months, I can continue to evolve this business and impact the lives that we're impacting. And you know, hopefully Taylor's not in a position to feel super stressed, and we can just support the baby in the best way possible. But yeah, there's a part of me that doesn't believe it, and then there's a huge part of me that believes it.
Yeah.
So the real question is, when's the Bucks party? When's the wedding? When are we getting pissed?
Well, the wedding is delayed now, but the Nicho is, well, it depends. If he keeps showing up, I don't know. If he keeps going the way he's going, he might get dropped. But no, Nicho is a best man, and we'll probably go up to maybe the Whitsundays or something. Or when did we say? When did we say?
Ellie Beach.
Ellie Beach for the Bucks.
And I will organise it because someone sitting here actually wanted to go and do a yoga retreat for his Bucks, and I said no.
Yoga
fucking
retreat?
way.
No, I didn't.
Fuck yeah.
Always want to go. And you need to liaise with Toby. Toby will be on board with you.
Oh, I'm organising this shit. I'm telling you. If you're thinking like, how does Jarrod and Nicho have a work-friend relationship? We've done it really well, haven't we? Because probably thinking like, how's he his mindset coach and now his best man, or one of his best men to the wedding? Like, but we have a really good relationship where Jarrod I can muck around a bit, and Jarrod can go, nah, Nicho, it's time to switch on, and I'll go, okay, yeah, it's time to switch on.
Should we tell the story of when I saw you guys fight?
Yeah. Or
we don't have time.
I'll give you a really quick example. So we're at the retreat, right? And before we entered the room when we do all the work, Nicho was like doing what he does, like won't go into details, but like he was pinching your ears.
Yeah.
And I turned around and I said to him, get your shit out now. But as soon as we walk through that door, we're on. And like, that's a nice metaphor, because when we know we're on, like, we're not going to I know when I step into a session with Nicho, I'm not his mate for that hour. Like, I'm there. I'm doing my best to come from a neutral place. But then, yeah, like I said, at the same time, we do make sure we do take the time to be able to be mates, because that's super important. Oh, that's more important, to be honest with you, than the partnership.
Yeah. Well, I reckon it's fitting then that you ask the last question that we're going to ask all of our guests, that you come up with, Nicho, for Jarrod.
It's the whole purpose of this, really. And then I got asked about, what would my 5-year-old self think of me now, sort of thing. And I thought, I could try come up with my own. But it would be like, if you were 10-year-old or 15-year-old brownie, whoever you picture in your head. As soon as you think of this, whoever comes to your mind, which kid you want to be, if you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at him in the mirror, what would he say or any advice, or what would he be thinking of you right now? What do you think?
What would I tell him?
Oh, first of all, what do you think he would think of you? And then what would you tell him?
I would hope that he would think of me as someone that can take him under the wing and just show him the way. And then what if he was looking at me now, he'd be like, everything in life has panned out exactly the way it's meant to plan out, and you were never meant to play rugby league. You were always meant to help people the athletes in a deeper way, which was to bring and ignite the human within out of them.
Yeah. Well, sounds like your younger self would be pretty stoked with what you've done as well.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the lounge of you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making the time, Jarrod. It's been such an insightful conversation, as it always is when we get to chat to you, and good luck with everything with building Mindful League. If people want to find you, that's where they want to go, isn't it? At Mindful League on Instagram. At
Mindful League. And if you're not an athlete, like you're an everyday athlete.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to absorb the content and just make it useful for you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Jarrod. Appreciate your time. I'll see you a couple of days' time.
Sunday.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of When We Grow Up, the podcast where we ask where we've been to know where we're going. A massive thank you again to Jarrod Brown. Make sure you are following his journey via Instagram at Mindful League, and make sure you're hitting subscribe wherever you're listening and following us on Instagram at When We Grow Up Pod to be the first to know who our next guest will be, and making sure you're on top of all our future episodes. We'll be back in your ears next week.
Thanks for the monotone voice, Marlee Silva.